Okay, I'm gonna pick up the lesson right now as if we were to skip steps 1 through 3. Steps 1 through 3 were where you, if you're having the students draw their own block letters. It does take some time. Most of them figure it out, but there can be some frustration. But it does take some time. And if you want to make your lesson quicker, you can skip steps 1 through 3, which are again drawing your block letters, and you can come to class with letters, block letters of their names already printed, like I've done here. And you can print them however you want. So I've got them like an outline here, or if you can't figure out a font like this, you can just print them like this, and they can then trace the outsides for the block letters. This is a great way to avoid some frustration and again, just save time. So what I usually do is if I have them print these, I usually still have them trace them onto drawing paper. The copy pen paper that you print them onto is a little thin for erasing and all the things that we may need to do. So again, they can just trace these onto the copy paper. I did this recently with the class, and some of them, the students wanted to use this, but they wanted to change their letters a little bit. Maybe they didn't like the A, and that was totally fine. And some kids did, and some kids were totally fine how it was already done. So if you're gonna do that, I just had them put their drawing paper over their letters and then trace them. And most of them were able to do that really quickly. I did have a few students that wanted to use a ruler, and it took some time. So I kind of just encourage them to just do their best. But you're always gonna have some students that are varying levels of perfectionists that maybe want, they want it to be perfect. So it's kind of finding that balance between them wanting to do a good job versus a little too much, or it's going to be too time consuming. So you're kind of juggling a lot of things. So I'm just going to go ahead and trace my letters. Okay, so I've traced my letters. One quick note, I do in the directions, if you print out the drawing guides, I do give you some suggestions of fonts that work well if you want to go ahead and print their names out. There are other ones. You can just Google font with no curves, or you can use any of these. And these were all free to download, and then I was just able to download them onto my computer and then just put the words and then change the size. I did come with some options to class. So if I had a student with a really long name, I asked the teacher if they had a nickname or their initials, and I gave them the option to do their full name. Maybe it was 8 letters or something, or they could do their nickname. And some of them chose to do the full long name, and some of them chose to do the shorter nickname. So just giving them some options is nice. One thing that is also nice if you bring the pre-made letters is if you have a student or two that maybe are just really struggling, this concept can be tricky, maybe they messed up several times, I just let them do the project from this paper. So maybe they tried to trace and they did the Sharpie and they got started and they got frustrated and they wanted to start over. I just said, you know what, just use this. And they could use either one like this or like this, and they went from there. And so it was a great kind of a backup for those students that get a little bit frustrated. Especially in 5th grade, there's just such a wide range of ability. So the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna use a Sharpie and you're gonna trace over these letters. So a lot of the students that wanted to use a ruler, to make it real straight, I kind of just let them know that they could trace them, and then when they come back with the Sharpie, they can use the Sharpie to kind of straighten out any of those lines that they don't like. Again, if they want to use a ruler, it's fine. It's just more time consuming. After the Sharpie, have them go back and erase any of the pencil lines that are showing through. It's nice to have some of the large pink erasers Some of them will have more erasing to do than others. I just have a little bit. Okay, so before we move on to the next step, I like to have them color these with either marker. If you don't want to do markers and you want to just stick with crayon, you can have them use crayon here too. I just have them color these darker. So you really want their name to stand out and pop. So I have them color their name darker with a crayon or with marker, whichever you want to have them do. Okay, so now I have colored in my name with marker. And so now the next step that I have to do, and I have to mark this next step with pencil. They're gonna make a vanishing point and then they're gonna mark some points on their letter. So the first thing they're gonna do is make a vanishing point. I like to do the vanishing point, inch or two from the top of the paper. They can do it right in the center if they want, or they can do it kind of anywhere around here. They can do it even to one side. It just creates a totally different look. It's up to them. So, it would be vanishing to a point, kind of off to the side. It's up to them. So I'm just going to do mine, somewhat in the middle, but maybe I'll do it a little off to one side just so you can see how it'll work, even not right in the middle. And then what I have them do is I have them kind of talk about this top line. So see how the letters all have these very top points. So on the C, it would be right here and right here. I don't have them kind of go down to those next corners. We're just going to start at the very top. And I have them mark them with pencil. Just draw a little small dot. And those are the first dots we're going to connect to our vanishing point. And it just kind of helps them visualize how they're starting. So they're just going to now take their ruler and connect all those points they just drew to their vanishing point. Okay, so I've just done those top points, and at this point they can kind of start to see how it's all going to come together. And this is an important step to do this. Fill in the letters with marker, and then we're going to trace these lines we just made with Sharpie and fill in these spaces. And you'll see why in a minute. By doing that, it gives them some parameters of where they draw the next line. So I'm going to go ahead and trace those in Sharpie and then fill those spaces in with crayon. Okay, so now we're at this point where we filled in the letters, we've created those first lines to the vanishing point to the top edge corners, and we filled in those spaces. And what this does is it gives us areas where lines will not go. And I'll show you in a minute. So I then would have them work one letter at a time. So I just would start, like I'm gonna start at this letter C and work over. And what you're gonna do is every single point or corner on the letter, you're gonna match it with your ruler to the vanishing point, and you're going to determine if there should be a line. And there should be a line anywhere that there's no filled in space. So for example, this one was a line. It's close to another line, but that's fine. But then this point, when I connect it to the vanishing point, it hits a space where it runs into other filled in space. And we're just going to only draw to right there. And they never go past the letter next to it. So again, there's some tricky things to this, but they'll start to see it. For example, they don't want to at this, so then let's just go one point at a time. So here, there's nowhere they're gonna draw because that's already filled in space. They're just gonna kind of keep going to all these lines. So come here, and now we have somewhere that we're gonna draw a line. And then same with here. And then just keep going point by point. So that's all of our points on our C. And as you can see, Most of our lines were partial lines. They only went in white space and they didn't go past the letter next to it. So those are kind of the rules to keep in mind. And then I have them go ahead and finish that letter. So go ahead and have them, like I said, just do one line at a time. It makes it a little bit more manageable. I also had my students, especially as they got started, I would have them draw the lines in pencil and then show me their lines in pencil before they did the Sharpie lines. And that way I could kind of check and remind them if maybe they have a point where a place they drew a line that shouldn't be there. So I would say, show me when you're done with your pencil lines. And I would come and say, yes, 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 those lines look great. Go over them in Sharpie. And that kind of helped them to get in the groove. And then they started to kind of figure it out on their own. And that way they didn't Sharpie a line and then were frustrated that they couldn't erase that line. If you want, this is a project you could bring some like whiteout tape to help if they wanted to erase some lines. But again, I just would have them like raise their hand when they're done with the pencil lines on a letter and just swing by and check it and then have them do their Sharpie lines. So they can go ahead and then fill in all this letter C, or they can finish their lines and then color. It's up to you and them, and some of them will kind of naturally do it one way or the other. And you can probably see now why it's helpful to have those letters darker. It kind of helps them pop out. So now I'm just gonna go to my next letter. Okay, really quickly, I wanna show you an example on this letter B where they might need a little bit of help. Something that when it has two openings like this, what they need to know is that the lines that you're pulling from your bottom opening never will go through the top opening. And like in this one, I don't really think, there's not really one that does. Well, like for example here, this line, yes, there's white space here, but it wouldn't go through. And you can kind of help them visualize, like if that B had two holes going through it, this one would not be seen through there. So there are a few tricks in this one where, again, that's why it's helpful to have you check their pencil lines before you have them do the Sharpie. So like I said, so like this line here, and then you'd have a line here, but this one would not go through the top line. That wouldn't be correct. So there are just some little tricks that they may need help seeing. Again, when I did this with my son's class just last week, most of them, I would say 75 or 80% of the students kind of caught on and were like, I get it, and could see the 1 point perspective. And then there was maybe, 20% of the class that needed a little extra help, and a few that needed a lot of extra help. But that, I would say that that's true of a lot of projects. Okay, so that is the name Finished in 1 point perspective. And you can see that I did the vanishing point a little to the right. You could do it right in the middle, a little to the left, and it still works. It doesn't have to be right in the middle. It just changes the direction that the letters are vanishing into. They can stop here, or they can fill in the outside with another color to help make it pop. But now you can see why having these letters in marker, or at least darker crayon, helps them to see it better than if this was all the same color green crayon, same shade. It would kind of all blend together. This is where 1 point perspective, if we wanted to get really technical, it would involve shading. It would bring in a lot of different elements and principles. I really have done everything I can to make this as simple as possible and to give you the tools that you need to help them be successful. And I really think that if you follow the steps that I've given you and the guides, I think you can help them do this, and at the end they really do think it's cool, and they like the effect that they've been able to create with the 1 point perspective.